Let Rabbi tell you something that nobody in your business circle is ever going to admit out loud. The most powerful knowledge in any industry, in any market, in any century of human history has never been freely distributed. And Rabbi is not talking about trade secrets or proprietary technology or some formula locked in a corporate vault. Rabbi is talking about the kind of knowledge that rewires how you think, how you negotiate, how you build, and how you protect what you build across generations. That kind of knowledge has always been reserved. It has always been protected. And in the world of Torah-based mentorship and Jewish business tradition, there are exactly 4 categories of wisdom that a real mentor, a real one who has actually built something lasting, will never hand you over coffee. They will never post it in a free webinar. They will never put it in a newsletter, because they understand something that the modern business world has almost completely forgotten. Information that costs nothing is valued at nothing. The Talmud in Tractate Bava Metzia makes this principle explicit in the context of commercial law. When something carries no price, its transmission carries no weight. The recipient does not receive it with the same seriousness. And in business, information without weight will not change your behavior. It will not change your decisions, and it will not change your outcomes. Rabbi has been in rooms where men who built 9- and 10-figure businesses sat together and spoke in a way that you will never hear on any podcast, in any conference, in any masterclass. And what they shared in those rooms was not inspiration. It was not hustle culture talking points. It was strategy, ancient, tested, refined, battle-hardened strategy. Today, Rabbi is going to give you 4 of those things, not because he does not value them, but because he wants to prove to you that this tradition is real. And once you see what it produces in your own thinking, you will understand why the rest of the conversation requires something more from you. But before Rabbi gets into the 4 pillars, he needs to tell you something that happened a few years ago. There was a real estate developer who came to Rabbi for advice. Highly educated, experienced team, significant resources. He was trying to close a deal on a portfolio of commercial properties, and he could not get the seller to move. He had tried every negotiation framework his consultants recommended, anchoring, silence techniques, BATNA analysis. None of it was working. And Rabbi asked him one question: do you know what the seller actually needs? Not what he says he wants across the table, what he actually needs underneath that position. And the developer looked at Rabbi like he was speaking a language he had never heard. And that is when Rabbi pulled out the oldest business manual he knows. Because what that developer was missing is not in any MBA curriculum. It is in the book of Genesis. And once Rabbi showed him how to apply what the patriarch Jacob understood about counterparty psychology 3,000 years ago, that developer closed the deal in 11 days, not by offering more money, by understanding a completely different currency. That is what today is about. So stay with Rabbi, because these 4 things are going to restructure how you think about deals, about mentors, about information, and about money itself. Before Rabbi begins, do something right now. If you have been looking for business content that goes deeper than surface level motivation, that connects ancient wisdom to modern operational decisions, subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications. Rabbi releases this level of breakdown every single week. Subscribe first, and then stay with Rabbi, because the first pillar alone will change how you look at every business relationship you currently have. The first thing a real mentor will never tell you for free is this: your network is not your net worth. Your obligation structure is. Most of you have heard the phrase "your network is your net worth" so many times that it has become wallpaper. You repeat it without examining what it actually means operationally. And Rabbi is going to tell you right now it is incomplete at best and dangerously misleading at worst. The Jewish business tradition does not talk about networks. It talks about chiyuvim, obligations. And the distinction between those 2 words is everything. A network is a collection of contacts. An obligation structure is a web of mutual accountability that has teeth, that has consequences, that does not collapse when the weather changes. In the Talmud, specifically in Tractate Shevet, the entire framework of oaths and obligations in commerce is treated with a level of detail that borders on obsessive. And Rabbi will tell you exactly why. Because the rabbis who built this system understood something that Silicon Valley is only now beginning to rediscover. The most durable business relationships in history are not built on goodwill. They are built on structured mutual obligation. Think about what this means in the real world. When you collect business cards at a conference and call it networking, you are building something with no structural integrity whatsoever. Those relationships will collapse the moment there is no immediate self-interest on both sides. But when you construct relationships around mutual obligation, around deals where both parties have real skin in the game, something to lose and something to gain that requires the other person specifically, you build something that survives pressure. Something that functions when everything else is falling apart. The Diamond District on 47th Street in New York operates almost entirely on handshake agreements. Millions of dollars in inventory changes hands on a single phrase, Mazel Ubrasha, good luck and blessing, and it functions as a binding commercial agreement. Why does that work? Not because everyone in that district is a saint, but because the community has constructed an obligation structure so dense, so interconnected, that violating a deal does not just cost you one transaction, it collapses your entire position in the network permanently. The obligation structure is the enforcement mechanism, and knowing how to build that kind of structure, who to bring into it, how to formalize informal obligations, when to demand a written contract, and when a handshake is actually stronger because it signals deeper trust, that is knowledge a real mentor will never give you without a relationship and without something at stake. Here is the diagnostic Rabbi wants you to apply right now. How many of your current business relationships are actual obligation structures? How many of the people you call your network will take real risk with you, will co-invest, will co-sign, will build something where failure has real consequences for both of you? And how many are contacts who answer your calls when things are going well and become unreachable when they are not? If you are being completely honest, the vast majority of what most entrepreneurs call their network falls into the second category. And the fix is not to attend more events. The fix is to restructure your most important relationships around stakes. Create situations where the other party has something real on the table. That is what creates a genuine business ally, not a LinkedIn connection, not a mutual follow. Now comment below right now. Write the word obligation. One word. It tells Rabbi who is actually applying this thinking and not just consuming it. And it helps him know what to go deeper on in future sessions. Write obligation in the comments right now. Then stay with Rabbi, because the second pillar is one that is costing most entrepreneurs money every single day without them knowing it. The second thing a real mentor will never tell you for free is how to price yourself correctly. And when Rabbi says correctly, he does not mean competitively. He does not mean according to what the market will bear. He means according to a principle that most entrepreneurs violate constantly without ever realizing it. And it is costing them not just revenue, but positioning. The Torah concept Rabbi wants you to understand comes from Leviticus chapter 25, the laws of Ona'ah, which is the prohibition against wrongful pricing. And before you assume this is simply about not overcharging people, let Rabbi stop you there immediately. Because Ona'ah in the Talmudic tradition, as developed in Tractate Bava Metzia, applies in both directions with equal force. It is as forbidden in Jewish commercial law to sell yourself too cheaply as it is to overcharge. This is not a spiritual concept. This is commercial law with a specific ratio attached to it. The Talmud specifies that if the price deviation from fair market value exceeds 1/6 in either direction, the transaction is legally voidable. Underpricing yourself carries the same legal gravity as fraud. Let that land completely. The rabbis who built this system understood something that no pricing consultant rabbi has ever encountered actually teaches. When you underprice yourself, you are not being humble or accessible or customer-friendly. You are committing a commercial distortion. You are sending a signal to the market that your product or your service is worth less than it actually is. And once that signal is in the market, it is extraordinarily difficult to retract. Rabbi has seen businesses destroyed not by overcharging, but by chronic underpricing that created a positioning from which they could never recover. The clients they attracted at low prices expected low prices forever, and when the business tried to raise rates to sustainable levels, those clients left, and years of effort had produced nothing durable. Now here is the biblical application that Rabbi wants you to hold on to as a concrete business lesson. When Joseph was in Egypt, Genesis chapters 41 through 47, he was not simply interpreting dreams. He was designing and executing the most sophisticated economic stabilization program the ancient world had ever seen. He accumulated grain during 7 years of abundance and distributed it during 7 years of famine. But here is the detail that most people miss entirely. He did not give the grain away. He sold it, even to the Egyptians, even during the famine. And he eventually used that grain to acquire all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. Joseph understood that free distribution collapses the perceived value of what you hold and creates dependency without creating sustainable exchange. He priced correctly, consistently, and the result was that Egypt became the dominant economic power of the known world. The application for you this week is this. Look at your pricing right now and ask yourself one honest question. Does this number reflect what you actually deliver at full capacity, or does it reflect your fear of what someone might say if you charge what you are genuinely worth? Those are two very different numbers, and the gap between them is what a mentor charges you to see. Rabbi wants you to share this video right now with one person in your world who is undercharging, one person who you know is delivering extraordinary value and pricing themselves as though they are a commodity. Share this video with them. You might be the reason they make a decision this week that changes their business permanently. Share it now and then stay with Rabbi, because the next two pillars are the most important and the most dangerous to give away, which is exactly why he is giving them to you now. The third thing a real mentor will never tell you for free is the actual rule about who you hire, and it has nothing to do with skills. Every hiring framework Rabbi has encountered in the corporate world is built around competency assessment, skills, experience, cultural fit, references, track record. And all of that matters. But there is a layer underneath all of it that the Jewish business tradition considers primary, and virtually no modern HR framework captures it. The concept comes from the laws of Shlichut in the Talmud, specifically Tractate Kiddushin. Shlichut means agency. It means that a person who acts on your behalf legally becomes an extension of you. Their actions within the scope of that agency are your actions. Their failures are your failures. Their commitments are your commitments. Their reputation becomes your reputation. In Jewish commercial law, this was treated with enormous gravity because it meant that the identity of the agent mattered as much as, or more than, their capability in many situations. And here is why. A highly capable agent with misaligned values does not just perform badly, they perform well in the wrong direction. And performing well in the wrong direction is infinitely more damaging to your business than a less capable person who is genuinely aligned with what you are building. Think about what this means for every hire you make. The question is not simply, can this person do the job? The question is, when this person is operating as your agent, when they are speaking in your name, making decisions on your behalf, representing your business in rooms where you are not present, what will they actually do? And the answer to that question is not on any resume. It is not revealed in any skills test. It is found only by understanding their value system at the level of what they do when nobody is watching and when there is no immediate consequence for getting it wrong. The modern application Rabbi calls the Shlichut audit, Before you bring anyone into your business in a role that gives them agency over your resources, your client relationships, or your reputation, you need to understand not their capabilities, but their governing principles. How do they handle a situation where honesty costs them something personally? How do they treat people who have absolutely no power over them? What do they do with information they have been trusted to hold in confidence? These are the diagnostics that matter. These are the questions that reveal character versus performance, and they cannot be answered by a standard interview process. The historical example that makes this completely concrete is the story of Abraham sending his servant Eliezer to find a wife for Isaac. Genesis chapter 24. Abraham did not give Eliezer a checklist of physical requirements or social status criteria. He extracted an oath about governing principles. Where will you look? Who will you exclude? What will you prioritize when you face a decision I cannot anticipate? He constructed an agency relationship with clear value boundaries first, and Eliezer executed that mission with a faithfulness and a creativity that exceeded anything Abraham could have scripted in advance, because Abraham selected for character first and then released him to operate. And the result was the marriage that became the foundation of the next generation of everything Abraham had built. In your business terms, the hires who will actually scale what you are building are not the ones with the most impressive credentials. They are the ones whose character produces results even when you are not in the room. Learning to identify that, learning the specific situations and questions that reveal character as distinct from performance, takes years of expensive mistakes to develop, which is exactly why no serious mentor gives that framework away without a relationship within which to apply it correctly. Now, Rabbi wants you to pause for a moment and notice something about this session. Notice how you are receiving this information. Notice whether part of your mind is already discounting some of it, already filing it as interesting but not urgent, already thinking you will come back to it later. That response, that instinct to defer on information that costs nothing, is itself the lesson. It is the proof of the principle Rabbi started with. Information without cost arrives without weight. And Rabbi is telling you that right now because the fourth pillar is the most powerful thing in this entire session, and Rabbi wants you to receive it with the weight it deserves. The fourth thing a real mentor will never tell you for free is the law of the first loss, and this one will challenge something that Rabbi guarantees you currently believe about risk. Most entrepreneurs and investors have been taught a consistent doctrine. Avoid loss, minimize downside, protect your capital, de-risk wherever possible, and that instinct is not wrong, but it is incomplete in a way that is costing you significant upside on the best deals available to you. The Jewish concept Rabbi wants to introduce comes from the laws of partnership in Tractate Bava Kama, and it is also embedded in the story of Jacob's 14 years of labor in Genesis chapters 29 through 31. The principle is this: the party who is willing to absorb the first loss in a transaction gains structural control over the outcome of that transaction. Read that again. The party who accepts the first loss gains structural control. This is counterintuitive to everything risk-averse modern business education teaches, but it is the foundation of how durable wealth has been built across generations in the Jewish business tradition. Here is how it works in practice. When you enter a negotiation or a partnership and you are willing to say clearly, if this goes wrong in the first stage, I will absorb that loss before it touches you, you do two things simultaneously. You signal extraordinary confidence in the underlying opportunity, which dramatically increases the other party's willingness to engage on your terms. And you create a structural position where, because you are the first loss absorber, you negotiate from a position of having already demonstrated the highest possible level of skin in the game. The result is that you get to write more of the terms for what happens when things go right. Jacob worked 14 years for Laban. 14 years. He absorbed an enormous first loss of time and labor and certainty with no guarantee of outcome. But by the end of those 14 years, he understood Laban's entire operation better than Laban did. He understood the genetics of the flocks. He understood the labor dynamics. He understood the family structure and its vulnerabilities. And in Genesis chapter 30, when it was time to negotiate his own portion, he negotiated from a position of total informational superiority because he had paid for that information with 14 years of first loss. The result was that he walked away with the foundation of a wealth that would sustain 12 tribes and a nation. The modern application is what Rabbi sees consistently in the best real estate and private equity structures. The operator who puts in the first capital, who takes the first position of risk, who absorbs the first potential loss, gets to write the structure of the deal for everyone who comes after. Preferred economics, control provisions, information rights, all of it flows to the party who demonstrated confidence with actual capital at actual risk. What does this mean for you this week? Look at whatever deal, partnership, or negotiation you are currently sitting on the fence about, and ask yourself this question: what would it look like for me to position myself as the first loss absorber on a defined and limited initial tranche? And what structural control does that position purchase for me in the upside scenario? That is the question, not how do I protect myself from all possible loss, but how do I use defined early risk as the currency that purchases structural control? That is the law of the first loss. And it is how passive participants become structural architects of the deals that build real wealth. Now let Rabbi bring all four of these together in a way that you can actually use starting this week, because this is not philosophy. This is a business briefing. The four things a real mentor will never tell you for free are these. Your obligation structure matters infinitely more than your network, and you need to audit right now which of your relationships actually have structural teeth and which are just contacts dressed up as allies. Your pricing is a commercial signal with legal weight in 3,000 years of business law, and underpricing yourself is treated with the same gravity as fraud because it is a distortion that damages everyone in the transaction. The Schlichut principle means that the people you hire become legal and reputational extensions of you, which means character must precede capability in every hiring decision you make from this point forward. And the law of the first loss teaches that absorbing defined early risk in a transaction is not weakness or desperation. It is the strategic move that purchases structural control of the upside. Here is your action for this week, not next month. This week, take one deal, one key relationship, or one pricing decision that you have been sitting on and run it through all four filters. What is the actual obligation structure of the relationship involved? Does your pricing reflect the real value being delivered in both directions? Who are the agents involved, and what do you actually know about their governing principles beyond their resume? And is there a first loss position available that would give you structural leverage in the outcome? 4 questions. That diagnostic will tell you more about whether a decision is structured correctly than any business framework you have ever been handed by a coach or a consultant. Because here is what Rabbi wants you to carry long after this session is over. The Torah is not just a holy book. It is the oldest, most continuously tested business manual in human history. It has been applied in every economic environment, every political condition, every market cycle, every form of adversity civilization has produced. And it still works, not only because it is sacred, though it is, but because it is true. And truth in business has a very simple test. Does it produce results across time and across context? The principles we discussed today have been producing results for 3,000 years. Whatever framework you learned in your last business course has been producing results for maybe 15. That difference matters enormously. If this way of thinking about business is new to you, if this is the first time you have encountered Torah applied as operational strategy rather than as religion, then subscribe to this channel right now. Because what Rabbi gave you today is the introduction. What comes next in this series goes deeper into the Talmudic frameworks that govern negotiation, capital allocation, partnership structure, pricing strategy, and how to build something that survives you. This is not content. This is a curriculum, and the first session was free. What comes next requires your attention, your consistency, and your willingness to take these principles into your actual business decisions and apply them. That is the price, and it is exactly the right price for what comes next. Subscribe now. Share this with one person in your network who is making decisions without this framework. And comment below with one of the 4 pillars that hit you hardest today. Tell Rabbi which one. Let this community hold you to applying it. Mazel ubracha, and Rabbi will see you in the next session.